Now, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
It's the second attempt at getting you on the podcast.
It
This
is.
time successful.
Yeah, better than 3 times success.
So very, very happy to have you. So can you quickly introduce yourself and talk about your own, let's say, career trajectory that's brought you where you are right now?
Sure. So I am Amy Lewin. I'm the editor of Sifted. I joined Sifted as its first employee back in 2018. So we had it feels like ages ago now. We had no website, we had no newsletter, we had nothing. We were just this sort of spin out from the Financial Times. My founder, John Thornhill, had the idea that European tech media needed a kind of serious media publication that would cover the whole continent, wrap it all together, and give it the kind of Financial Times quality reporting that it deserved. Because, lots of these companies were getting bigger and bigger, more influential, and they would be the kinds of businesses that one day would be big enough and impactful enough that a publication like the Financial Times would cover. So that's how Sifted began. We launched website, newsletter, event, podcast, all the usual things ourselves. And I went from being a senior reporter to editor. I now lead a team of 11 journalists. We're based mostly in London, but we have a person in Stockholm, 2 people in Berlin and 1 person in Paris. And we still do what we set out to do, which is cover Europe's increasingly impactful, big, important, interesting startup and tech scene.
So I was just trying to think. So in 2018, when you started, what was the big news?
What was the big news? It was definitely still the era of digital banks being, Monzo and Revolut and Starling and N26 all being quite
Crypto
young
was still big, I guess, like blockchain was
interesting.
still big, right?
I think that came like a tiny bit later. It was also early on, we had the scooter craze, we had the speedy grocery
that's the
craze,
one, yeah.
we had all of those fun things. And now we're into AI and defense. So
exactly.
a lot has changed in just 7 years.
So how do you think you differentiate? How did you differentiate at that point from the tech media that was already on the market, and how do you do it now? Has it changed also over time?
It's changed heaps. So when we started out, probably our biggest competitor was TechCrunch. So always been very sort of Silicon Valley focused, but they had a big European team. They were the go-to, I think, for lots of founders, for lots of communications people. They wanted to appear in TechCrunch. There was also obviously the kind of bigger business publications like Bloomberg and the Financial Times covering the very, very large scale-up companies that had raised hundreds of millions of pounds or dollars or euros. And then we saw a lot of very good but quite local players, so publications that were great for the Swedish tech ecosystem or the French ecosystem or wherever it is, often in that local language. And so there was no one, we felt, kind of tying together the whole European scene, and also adding a kind of 2 things, a kind of layer of analysis and sort of really in-depth reporting of where sectors might be heading. And also, I think something that's differentiated Sifted right from the start is a focus on the actual company building side of things. We've always, I think,
the startup life.
The startup life. I think we've always been a bit more focused on the business than the technology itself, and that's maybe where, obviously, the Next Web, where you used to work, was maybe, I'd say, a bit more focused on how the technology itself worked, and some of the other publications are around. Whereas we've always focused a lot more on how do you get from 2-3 people with an idea to raising investment, hiring a team, expanding internationally, eventually realizing you probably need to fire some of those people you hired, realizing some of those investors were not quite the lovely people you thought they were, and all these trials and tribulations of startup life, which are very, very unique to this kind of business. And I think anyone who runs a company, who works for a company, myself, I'm a startup employee, knows that the trajectory is not smooth. Sometimes you wonder why you don't just have a nice, cushy corporate job with a comfortable salary and, not crazy ups and downs in your working hours, but there's something special about building something, and we wanted to kind of capture that.
Right. So that was a differentiation at the beginning, but what is it now? Is it still the same?
No, so we've seen so many tech publications kind of leave Europe in the past year. So TechCrunch changed ownership and they decided to lay off all of their European team. We saw the Next Web shut down and lay off all its teams. We've also seen journalists at places like CNBC and Business Insider and some of these other publications that historically had much bigger tech teams focus away from tech. And people sometimes ask me, or say, that must be great news for Sifted. I'm not sure it is. Competition is great, and I'm personally just very sad when I see a journalist losing a job, because it's not like there are lots of places that are hiring right now.
So now your differentiator is that you exist.
Yeah, we're still alive. No, I think we've also, over time, you really learn what your readers want, what they value. We have a subscription offering these days, and so you can very tangibly see the kind of articles people will pay you quite a lot of money to read, the kind of data they want, the kind of insights they're following. And so we're every day by day getting closer and closer to the optimal output for what our readers, who are investors, but also founders, angel investors, corporates, government, policy people, all around Europe and further afield, want to read.
And do you still consider yourself a media company? Because now you have the data, the event, the subscription, all the stuff.
Yeah, journalism is at the heart of everything we do. It's the reason people sign up to our newsletters. It's the reason people come to our conference, the Sifted Summit, which happens every October. It's the reason commercial people want to partner with us. And we found that the data part of our company, where we offer, we track all the funding rounds that are happening in Europe. We track M&A. We track which investors are sort of more or less active in certain regions and sectors. We find that is a natural complement to the journalism, and having the combo makes it a more appealing offering.
How has your own role evolved over the years?
Yeah, well, it was super fun in the early days. I'm not saying it isn't anymore, but it was great to join a company, be the only reporter. And we were covering Europe, and I was based in London. So I had the delightful job of being sent to Spain, going to Lisbon, going to Stockholm, Berlin, Paris, just all of these ecosystems, Dublin, all these ecosystems around Europe to basically make contacts. I was pitching Sifted back then. No one had heard of us, trying to get people to sign up. And so those first a year or two before COVID shut everything down, there was a lot of hustle, but it was fun. It was hard because people didn't take you that seriously always, and you had to prove yourselves. Now my role is different. People know who we are. I've had a few people today come up to me and say, "Are you Amy from Sifted?" Which is, I'm not going to pretend my ego isn't stroked every time that happens. But we have to. There's still heaps of people who don't know who we are. I have other challenges, like I have a team to manage. Anyone who manages anyone knows the joy and the strain of that. My roles have become more sort of overseeing what we as an editorial team publish, not just that, the company as well. I'm on the leadership team talking about, where do we go? Where do we invest our energy? What does our audience want from us? Where are there perhaps new audiences we can tap into? So it's a classic startup. The job is never the same year on year.
Oh, absolutely. And so one of the reasons, I suppose, of all the closures that we saw in European media has to do with, pure business. So basically, if something doesn't make enough money, then it is not a focus. I think it was definitely the case with TechCrunch, for example. How about your own business model? So how has it evolved, and what is it like now?
Yeah, so we have several revenue streams, like most media companies. They're still the main one today is the advertising, the sponsorship. So different organisations pay us to sponsor our newsletter. They work with us on our event that we hold. They work with us on the podcast, exactly. We do branded content on our site, all the kind of usual offering. That's still the biggest chunk of our revenue. The event also part of that was something we launched just as we were coming out of COVID. So that's been going quite a few years now. And then the fastest growing part of our revenue is our subscriptions. So we're hoping that we can double them next year. And we very much hope to be able to get to profitability within a year or two. That's very much our goal.
And you're also VC backed, right?
We are.
So,
we have.
I just wonder how it works and whether, how do you see generally the idea of taking VC money for media? Is it always a VC case? Does it always make sense?
I think it's often not a VC case. It's hard. I think if we look at media more broadly, I think beyond the tech and startup world, although it's also true there, we've seen this huge movement towards people starting individual substacks, having very personality-led media companies, which I think is amazing. There's lots of people I'm sure who listen to this might sign up to the newcomer newsletter or all sorts of things. The challenge there is it's so dependent often on a personality, and they're just not that scalable. You inevitably, if you start holding events and you start doing loads of sponsorship, you need to hire a team, and then it doesn't. It's just not quite the same thing. I also don't know the answer to this, but I'm very intrigued about how they cope with potential legal costs, etc. If they're writing things people might not want them to write, and if they're ever going to be sued, are they? I don't know. Are they well protected there? Whereas when you're in a slightly bigger company, you've got that kind of institutional protection.
I think legal insurance costs a lot for these organizations if they take one. But then for you it has worked though that taking VC money at the beginning and then trying to make it to profitability before we need to raise more.
Yeah, so we've raised a few small rounds over our time. We've raised from angel investors. We've raised from the Financial Times, is one of our biggest investors, and another investor called Scale Up Capital. So representatives from both those companies are on our board. It does obviously make things a bit more complicated. You've got more people's points of view on where the company should focus and where it should go. But it does mean you can grow that bit faster, launch more things earlier on.
But you're not raising more.
We're hopefully not going to raise more because we're hopefully going to get to profitability, and then we will never need to knock on investors' doors, other than for tips
for
and
comments, exactly.
gossip, ever again.
And I mean, one of the reasons I think why business models are now pretty important question is that the advertisement business model is being sort of disrupted by the advent of generative AI and the way that bigger publications in particular are just losing traffic to Google AI overviews and stuff like that. Is this something that you are also feeling?
Not so much, because a lot of our revenue comes from those sponsorship opportunities that are, in a newsletter or on our website or in person. They're not so affected. And then luckily, I think because we're a business publication, our subscribers are businesses, and we've, people lock in. We're not reliant on the kind of mass traffic that I think some businesses are for advertising on the website itself. I think those are the models that are most disrupted by the changes that AI is making to search. We are definitely affected. We see less traffic coming to our site, but it doesn't matter in the same way, because that's not how lots of our readers are engaging with us. We have direct channels. We've spoken about newsletters. We also have the podcast. We also are all very active on LinkedIn and other social media channels. So we have these other routes to get to our readers. So I think it makes it a bit less scary.
Yeah. And the FT, for example, has signed a contract, I believe, with OpenAI. So they provided training data, and there are some other things, I suppose, involved. Have you signed any similar contracts? Have you ever been asked to? Would you?
We have not signed any. I do not know if we have been asked. I don't know. I think we're definitely open to experimenting with all of these things. It's just making sure you strike a good deal, right?
And have you had a lot of thoughts around the general influence of generative AI on journalism. What do you think does it mean for the future of the profession?
I think like a lot of things, the kind of fears were a bit overblown at the start. I think we've all learned pretty quickly that generative AI can't quite be trusted enough of the time. We've seen quite a lot of, big established news players like Bloomberg and others use AI in certain ways and then find it did something inaccurate or, and have to issue apologies. There were also a bunch of cases of journalists using fake AI-generated interviewees and not realizing that these quotes they were using didn't come from a real person. So I think people have drawn back a little bit. I think the kind of commoditized news, which was never something we specialized in, is for sure getting disrupted because those kind of press releases can be generated. You can write them and share them on your own channels. But I think when it comes to amazing, in-depth interviews that pull, extract information out of people they wouldn't otherwise share, when it comes to analysing what's going on in a sector, tying it all together, explaining what that all means to a reader. I really don't think AI is there yet. And I think tied into this is the importance of journalists and their own brands, that people do follow individuals, they trust individuals, they like certain individuals, whether it's their point of view, their take on things, the selection of things they cover. I think we'll see people lean more and more into that, and that's something I'm encouraging the team to do. I want them all people to know them, people to recognize their faces, people to follow them on LinkedIn because they like the posts they make, because I think that makes them more resilient as individuals, whether they're working at Sifted or somewhere else in the future. And I think as a whole, it makes Sifted more resilient as an organization.
I spent a number of hours in my previous role as head of media at TNW talking to the team about the importance of personal brand and being on LinkedIn and writing stuff and being recognizable. So I fully agree with that. But interestingly, I heard something funny the other day that many startups in particular, instead of going after coverage in media, are actually much more interested in more like going viral on LinkedIn. So what's going on? Is LinkedIn becoming the new media, like for technology?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is definitely one to watch. I mean, it's an incredibly important broadcast channel for us, but we do find a lot of news. We see a lot of hot takes on there. It's a useful way of kind of sense checking what's going on in the industry. But yeah, it's a way to disintermediate the traditional media. You can share news there. I think what I guess I hope is that readers out there understand the difference between something someone wants you to read and something, maybe a journalist wants you to read. They're going to be different. And if you're only reliant on information that the company shares willingly of their own accord, then you're only ever going to see one side of any story.
But I also feel that more and more these kind of news stories that basically rely on whatever the company actually wants to share, in our case it would mostly be funding rounds, right? It's getting more and more like commoditized. It doesn't really matter anymore like where you read about it. Is it on LinkedIn? Is it on a certain publication? Is it elsewhere? It's just there. It's just something to be packaged and repackaged, and it's not a journalistic product anymore.
No, I don't think so, and it's not something we really focus on. Sure, we cover funding rounds if we've heard it's a company people are really, really excited about, if they're doing something really novel, if there's something crazy about it, whether they've hit 100 million ARR in 2 minutes or,
Yeah, that's the current pace, right?
Yeah, that's about the pace we're after, then that might make the cut. But otherwise, as you say, it's very commoditized. You could read the same story in multiple publications. So sort of what's the value in covering that for your reader?
Yeah. And do you have an AI policy at Sifted?
We do. We have a policy around how we use images, and we have a policy for the journalists in terms of how we use AI. So we would never use AI to fully write an article. We might use it to help us come up with ideas for questions to ask people. We might use it for sort of base research into a company. What have other people written about them? We sometimes put podcasts into tools to kind of summarize what happened, maybe before I've got a podcast guest coming on, what they said on previous podcasts. But we would always fact check anything before publication. As I said, we'd never have it actually write the prose of an article. So we tried to use it in a way that makes us more efficient, but in no way detracts from the trustfulness of what we're producing.
Yeah. And do you think, are you going to grow the team this year, next year? Is there still potential to become a bigger publication within this ecosystem, within this niche?
Yeah, right now, no plans to hire. The team's a very well-oiled machine right now. It's great. We've had a few amazing new people start at the beginning of the year, and no one's left or moved since then. And we're a very collaborative team. And I think when people have been doing what they've been doing for a few years, they get to know each other super well. You are able to just produce better things. So touch wood, it stays that way for a while. I also don't really know where we would hire necessarily. I feel like we've got the kind of busiest geographies covered. We've got the buzziest sectors. Maybe if space tech becomes super big, we might want to hire someone there. But we have people covering all the busiest ones at the moment: fintech, defense, AI, venture capital, UK, Nordics, France and Germany. So I think there isn't right now a huge need for extra people.
Makes sense.
Unless we were to go big on podcast and video, then I feel like we might need some people, but I need to make more of a business case for that first.
Right. And product-wise, what are the plans?
So we are in the middle of a very exciting change of paywall provider.
I can imagine how exciting it is.
Yeah, very exciting for our developers. We're about to go into a cycle of kind of product plans for the next year. So.
Okay, then I will ask next time then.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Amy, once again, thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks a lot for coming, and good luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks.
That was good. That was fun.